Welcome to Piccadilly Talks. I'm your host, Angelique Virtue, and today we'll be talking about how we reimagine education for the 21st century. And to have that conversation with us today, I am joined by Professor Garfield Young. He is the Vice President and Chief Operations and Projects Manager for UTech. Hello, Professor Young.
Hello.
I'm very happy to have you.
It's my pleasure.
We're going to be talking about curriculum development as part of one of the routes that we can take to reimagine education. And I'm going to start with, as you mentioned, studying and focusing on geomatics education.
Yes.
Start there, Professor. What is geomatics and what does it have to do with curriculum development and how we can prepare for the 21st century?
Thank you so much for having me. I perhaps should mention that I have taught land surveying and cartography for many years.
Oh my.
People perhaps can relate to those terms. But by the time I got to my master's degree, I actually was given the option. I was asked, do you want your certificate to say geomatics engineering, or do you want it to say surveying and spatial information sciences? I chose surveying and spatial information sciences because I'm going to return to the Caribbean and declare I'm a geomatic engineer, and people are going to say, what is that? They're still saying that. But it really speaks to the heart of what we are talking about, change, the need to reimagine, because things have changed drastically in the education industry. So if the discipline I studied many years in, when I was doing my undergrad, when I was at CAST doing a diploma in land surveying,
Yes.
Only if I were French, I would say géomatique. But in Canada, in the early 80s, there was a recognition by the educators of surveying that there was something so different about how we did earth measurement, that we were incorporating any technology that came about, three-dimensional laser scanning, remote sensing, photogrammetry. That discipline was just embracing all of them, and it totally transformed the how and the what surveyors did. And so they really weren't the same professional. So by the time I got to a doctoral degree, I had fully embraced it.
Yes.
And so my research was in pedagogical and curriculum development in geomatic engineering.
Oh my.
And so yes, I'm now a geomatician, and I teach geomatics. So many universities now call it that, because it really is very different.
It's an incredible journey. And as we talk about curriculum development, you've been at the University of Technology for now 30 years,
Yes.
3-0. And so would have been part of not only the transition of CAST into UTech, but the development of courses and curricula over this time.
Yes.
What, if you can recall, was the most impactful change that UTech had to undertake as it ushered in its new era in around 1995 to address the needs of the nation at that time? And then we're going to bring it to what you're doing today.
Right. There is something really important about the approach to education CAST into UTech has taken, which is why a graduate from this institution, which is our national university,
Yes.
but it really is a university for the region. Any Caribbean country I go in there, I will find persons who have been trained in built environment fields, in science, in engineering, and in other areas. So the university had that reputation to maintain, that we were not going to lose that at all. So we were upgrading our diploma courses to bachelor's degree, and we eventually, and we are now doing it, would offer master's degree and doctoral degrees. So that transformation required that we review all that we were doing, because there's a reason for education. So we had to explore, we had to reimagine. So we had to think again, why are we doing this, and how are we going to impact our society, our economy, people's ambition, because education is all about that. It has a utilitarian function. It's also about people achieving, giving people the tools to make informed decisions. And so All of that we took on board. So we examined the curriculum, we looked at what was happening in the various industries we prepare people for, and we brought the industry in as part of the discussion about what will be appropriate for higher education going forward from a university that is in touch with the industry. And that's the way we continue to operate as a university.
I think you've touched on something very important, just as you closed out that statement, which is that you brought the industry on board
Yes.
to meet the needs of industry, that you
Yes.
did not try to prescribe from your academic position that this is what industry and society needed, but that you asked society, how can we serve you? Who are the professionals, the engineers that you need?
Yes.
And then we'll train them and provide them for you.
Yes.
The needs of the industry from then to now are much different,
Oh,
or
yes.
they have expanded and
Oh, yes.
grown. What are you seeing now in terms of industry need? And say for the last 5 years, how has UTech adjusted curricula to meet those needs?
5 is a significant number. It is part of our mandate as a university. Every 5 years we have to, whether or not there is AI, whether or not
There's a
is
pandemic.
Yes, every 5 years we are obliged to do expansive course reviews. The fact that we bring in industry, the fact that we have external examiners, local one and a foreign one, one who is an expert in academia and one who is an expert in the industry. We teach land surveying, so we bring a land surveyor in, not just to advise or we review the curriculum, but they sit on a course advisory committee on an ongoing basis to assess every aspect of our curriculum. So even if we're doing a minor change, it has to be discussed at that level, embraced by them. In fact, you can't make changes. To be a commissioned land surveyor, you need a license to operate from the Land Surveyors Board of Jamaica. And the Land Surveyors Act mentions the university in it. It says you need a degree from the University of Technology, Jamaica. And if you get it from elsewhere, you still need to go back to UTech and do this and this. And after that, then you are attached to a surveyor who has been so authorized to supervise a student who is preparing for professional licensure, and then you do a board exam. UTech has a representative on the board. The industry sits with us at the university every time we change something. And if we are changing something, we are not at liberty to just advise the board that it's changed. The board has to authorize all of this. So there is this very tight relationship between the regulatory body, the organizations that represent the professions, and us in academia. Clearly, we're not going to lock ourselves away because we'll become irrelevant. And we have to be relevant.
It sounds like a very robust, symbiotic relationship between the pupils who you must educate
Yes.
and guardians of that licensure, that certification.
Yes.
And that's important for us as we have this conversation in season 4 of Piccadilly Talks, because certification is so important, because the needs and what we need certification in continues to change. And so I like to hear that bodies are having such a robust but responsible approach to changes and how you certify.
Definitely.
When we want to create now more vibrant learning environments to meet the needs, so we now realize there needs to be a change. You have maybe 2 or 3 points that you're saying, boy, this served us the previous 5 years, but as we look into the next 5 years, we're saying we need to make these changes. You've talked about how you make that decision, but what are some of the things you are seeing, and perhaps not specific to your industry, but like in general? What are the general trends that you're seeing that the university has to adjust in how it certifies?
Well, the university I represent, actually teaching both, but the one I represent primarily had to, this is a good example. We had to develop an AI policy. Artificial intelligence is here. The answer is not to ignore it and keep doing things the traditional way, because you will consistently see work presented to you for assessment that's not done by the students, but is generated through AI. So what do we do with it? Do we run from it? Do we ban AI? And that's not the approach. So universities the world round are developing AI policies. UTech now has an AI policy, and the policy addresses academic staff, admin staff, all levels of staff, and clearly it addresses our students. So what do we allow? How do we assess students in an age when we know that this is an information age? The information is out there. Generative AI is out there. They can plug my essay question, and in seconds it generates. In fact, I do it. When I prepare an essay, I put it in AI to see what would ChatGPT say.
Oh my.
And many times, because geomatics is such a very niche profession with some unique jargons and so on, if I put traversing, it may give me an unrelated meaning, and then I say to AI, no, I'm not talking about that. And in seconds it corrects it. So it does that. So new professions like a prompt engineer. Have you ever heard of a prompt engineer?
I have heard of prompt
Right.
engineering. And so the university has to be thinking of a new kind of engineer and how you certify
so we
that
have
person.
to think about how relevant is the course that I have been offering, and how do I incorporate technology? We're not ignoring it. We are the University of Technology. We are incorporating technology. So global positioning system, do I run a tape to determine the measurement between two land boundaries, or do I use global positioning system? A little device in my hand, I don't have to cut the line between them. I can stand with a receiver, with a GPS receiver, and they're getting smaller and smaller. And what do we do with all of this technology that's just there? It's explosive, it's happening. And then we shouldn't even fool ourselves that we can teach our students all of this technology. I hope somewhere in this interview we can talk about problem-based learning.
You can go right into it. You said problem-based learning.
Right.
What do you mean by that, Professor?
Flipping the curriculum.
And I tell you, I tell you what the problem is and tell you about it?
Well, the
Or how I've
traditional
solved it?
approach is
Yes.
I sit in a lecture and I listen without interpreting, because the source of knowledge is at the podium, who has consulted all the important seminal text, who has published and researched, and I sit there and I take notes. And then at the end of that academic session, I'm given an assessment, normally an unseen exam with people standing over you, invigilators, so you don't consult anybody or anything. And you respond to a question within the confines of the knowledge given to you by the source of knowledge. Now, mark you, if you look at the root meaning of education, it means to pull out. So what if we were to think that the 30 students sitting in front of me who chose geomatics engineering but never really thought, what does that really mean? And I had to spend the first session telling them, and then some of them say, oh, that's exciting, I want to stay. And others think, no, this is scary, this is not what I thought. Well, whatever it is. What if the approach were different? That my role as an educator is not a teacher, I'm a facilitator of learning. There's a recognition that when you sit in my class, you bring something to the table. Your life experience, you went to Immaculate, you went to Calabar, wherever you went, you are from the rural area, you're from another country, and I see students from all over the world. What has your experience been? Do you bring that to the table that we can co-construct knowledge? That co means we're doing it together. The spotlight is not on me. So my role is to develop a complex problem, geomatics related, for example,
Yes.
architecture related, construction management, whatever you come to the university to do. It could be cross-disciplinary. I could be a built environment expert. People don't know what that is. It means you learn a little real estate, and you learn some construction, and you learn some architecture, and you learn some surveying. You're a built environment expert. So I do a complex problem that borrows from all of these related disciplines. And I give it to the brand new students. I put them in a group of 5. I say, here is your problem, solve it. Now, what do we do in such a context? We place around them all the resources they need, but they must access it. First, you must deconstruct the problem. The 6 of you sit together and say, what is this asking me? Ask AI if you want. Ask a senior student if you want. Knock on a lecturer's door and a professor's door and ask, not for them to deconstruct it for you, but in your deconstruction, figure out the various elements that will lead you to a solution. And then walk down the passage and find a lab with a software, with an instructional manual. Not somebody teaching you to do the software. Software can be learned. You ever see a baby with a cell phone? They can figure it, accept that they're bringing something to the table. I sat at the University of Aalborg. I studied a geomatics program that was fully done by problem-based learning. I looked at the first-year students in their little space, even how the university is designed, the rooms, even the furniture is designed for that. And then you see a little passage down to a professor's, and he was sitting there doing his research, the students were deconstructing. If you ever hear the solutions these students come up with, so they figure, I need to do a topographical survey, or there's a boundary dispute, we need a cadastral survey. How do we do cadastral survey? There's a law that governs cadastral survey. Let's find a lawyer who understands land law and ask the facilitator to bring that person in and to sit with us. Call it a lecture, call it a tutorial, call it a talk, whatever you. But they're the ones who have embraced the responsibility for their own learning, and they go chasing after the resources they need to solve the problem. They become critical thinkers. There's no way you can come to the solution without thinking critically. They become problem solvers. And if you give 10 groups the same problem, they take a very different route to get to it, and you'd be amazed at how similar some of the solutions are.
So, Professor, are you saying this kind of deconstructed classroom, problem-based approach, student-led interrogation, decentralization of the lecturer as the paragon and mountain of knowledge is being practiced at UTech?
Oh.
Is
now,
this what you're suggesting?
In the Caribbean context, can you imagine, I came back to Jamaica in 2010, having studied in the UK, observed a UK group of medical students who, some of them were engineers, some of them were pharmacists and nurses, but always wanted to become a medical doctor. And they thought, you're mature people who have industry experience, we are going to try problem-based learning with you. But it's in a context where, remember the first example I gave you was Denmark in Aalborg, where you have students coming from secondary school system who have been exposed to that approach. That's not our approach generally. We're more traditional.
Right.
So my students thought, but my lecturer is going to fail me, not meaning failing a paper. I have not met my responsibility because I'm throwing it back at them. You see, you can't give me a land administration problem. I don't even know how to spell land administration. You're first supposed to tell me how to do it. Give me the boundary in which I can operate. And then I said, no. I then started to question them, and they realized, but we know more than we believe. And so I had to help them along the way. So we had to try a hybrid version of it because of who they were, not in terms of their ability, but because of how they have engaged in an educational system that has taken a particular route. So I'm not suggesting we should wholesale adopt problem-based learning, but especially at the higher level, as we think about early childhood education into primary and secondary, and we get into further education, into higher education, there must be a building, the taxonomy. So you start them with knowledge base, but you get them all the way up to synthesis. So by the time they get to university, for me to stand in front of them in a lecture, they're going to say, really, sir, you're insulting our intelligence.
And isn't that how many students already feel? Because knowledge is so available nowadays in the 21st century, for a lecturer to believe that they are the bastion of knowledge only is already an insult to the students who would have been perhaps taking a summer and saying, you know, AI or, you know, GPT, here is the syllabus, I'm going to upload the syllabus that I'm going to start in August.
Yes.
Bring out the key points,
Yes.
and let's solve a problem together.
Yes.
And so if lecturers are not realizing that these tools are available to everyone, then it's true. Our classrooms become one set of persons thinking one thing and the lecturer thinking another thing. I want us to shift a little bit in the few minutes that we have left and talk about how, one, this kind of, I don't want to say revolutionary because it's many years ago, but this kind of advanced hybrid approach that is more inclusive and decentralizes the traditional classroom setting. When we begin to think this way, as you're saying, UTech has begun to think, and you're adjusting curriculum, or at least the methodology for teaching delivery, what kind of impact are we talking about when we think of economic development and creating a sustainable cadre of skilled persons for us to pull on to establish our workforce or to continue our workforce? What kind of impact will this kind of approach take?
Well, this is all about building human capital.
Yes.
So the way to get out of the third world boundary, how do we break free from our dependence on others? We have to focus on investing on the human capital. I think industry needs to think differently. They need to recognize that when the university releases this new cadre of students who recognize that I have the power to change things, I can think differently, I can think outside of the box. There's sometimes a dichotomy between what academia is doing and what profession expects. But our approach to education, because we bring them in, we don't have to wait until the graduates leave to tell them, you know, you're going to see something different from this group of students coming out of our Geomatics program.
Right.
Because we did something different this time. Right. We took them to Negril for 2 weeks and we made them do real topographical surveys. We made them assess the erosion of the coastline using the technology. So we made them select the technology they wanted to use because it's available. So we're not going to suggest to them, use this old method that we have used for 15, 20 years.
Right.
Use something different. How will, now that obviously is going to impact productivity when they go out there. But if these students are going to be dependent on those who are supervising them in private practices, even in government, if they're stuck in the old way and think you have to do it the old way, then there is sometimes a dichotomous relationship and this butting head.
Yes.
But I sincerely think, and the approach we have taken at UTech helps to lessen the blow. There are still older people who have been in industry who think the way we did it is the better way to do it, really, with the technology. But in the disciplines we teach, if you ignore technology, you're archaic. Eventually, people are going to ask the young surveyor to do the work because it happens quicker and the accuracy is not compromised. So economic progress in our third world setting, I hate that term, third world, in our developing country setting, is really intrinsically linked to an education system that is relevant, that is with the time, that's embracing the technology, that has found a way to integrate it. And when all of us, government, industry, recognize that this change is happening in academia, then we're going to really see the benefit because they'll be allowed the space to operate in this new way.
Do we have a true shortage then of engineers who are ready to work? Because what you're describing is phenomenal, but we still hear that we do not have enough engineers, we do not have enough surveyors to do the work required to fill the workforce gap, to build our country, to move us from third world or developing country status to where we want to be. Is the UTech sending out the professionals that the nation need at the rate and the quality that it desires in order to move to where it wants to go?
Well, if any young woman or young man is listening, you need to enroll in the program. There are scholarships available and nobody's taking them up. We have seats for persons and nobody's coming into the program. Or they're not doing well enough in math and physics to get in the program to do. But we need people who have space.
Wow.
I don't know if people know who a quantity surveyor is. The industry is begging us. We get calls every week. Can you send us a quantity surveyor? And then we say to the high school, let us come and tell you what these professions are and how much people can earn. But part of the challenge is
Yes.
what we require for matriculation, which is an access issue. We need to deal with access. Engineering, any of the disciplines in the built environment, any of the disciplines in engineering, the industry needs more. So it's not that we are not training persons for the industries. They need to come to us. Wow. So there is an issue with matriculation. The math they need and the physics they need, and sometimes the chemistry they need for the engineering programs, that we get not enough persons with the kind of passes we need in these subjects. So we have scholarships available. We have space available in our classes.
You have resources
in our
available.
Labs. We have the resources. The government supports scholarships. We have other industry players supporting scholarship, but we don't have enough people coming to do those programs. And so the industry is calling for you students, young women, young men, and I'm deliberately saying women first, because persons may think, if you're thinking engineering and built environment, architecture and construction, that we are only talking to men. But the truth is, I've been teaching for 3 decades, and increasingly the female students have been outdoing the male students in the theoretical aspects. The males still have an edge over the female in the practical aspects. But if you study engineering, built environment, even in the science area, even in the social science areas in our national university, the approach of the university is to make you ready for work. And ask anybody in industry, any of the industry players, a graduate from UTech is ready for work. And so if you want to study engineering or built environment, construction, quantity surveying, how many of you even know what quantity surveying is? The industry is just waiting for someone who is trained to take their place in industry in Jamaica, across the region and beyond.
Well, I think that's a great point to end. We have covered so much, but I think what is important about the idea of how we educate for the 21st century, you are certainly saying that one, the UTech has aggressively adjusted and adopted new kinds of methodologies to deliver teaching. It's available to students, and that in order to meet the demands of a developing Jamaica, you're saying we have the space, we have the opportunity, it's for us to take advantage.
Yes.
Well, sir.
You've said it well.
Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Young, and you heard it here at Piccadilly Talks. Do what you need to do, get your prerequisites and apply to the University of Technology to get the certification you need to meet the demands of the workforce, both here in Jamaica, the region, and as Prof said, even around the world. Thank you so much for joining me, Prof. That's the time we have for this episode of Piccadilly Talks. I'm your host, Angelique Virtue. Until next time.